Okay, we are recording. So welcome everyone to this presentation on the CHSE-A application process. Very glad that everyone is here. And looks like I have one more technical thing to manage here. I covered up my participants box. There we go. Right. You'll see today we have myself and Penny Watts. I'm Andrew Spain. I'm the Director of Certification for the Society for Simulation in Healthcare. And Penny, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Penny Watts, and I am currently the chair of the Chsea subcommittee, and I am a director of simulation at the School of Nursing at UAB in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. And you can see on the screen as well the names of the committee members that have helped us in the recent redevelopment of the CHSE-A application process, the requirements and review and everything like that. There's obviously been many more people involved over the years, but this is our current subcommittee as it stands, and I want to make sure we thank them for all their efforts that they put into what you will now be seeing in our presentation as we go today. If you have any questions, of course, please feel free to put them in the chat, or you can hold them till the end. We do have a Q&A session at the end. But for now, we'll just go ahead and roll through our presentation. Hopefully, we'll answer a lot of your questions, but please make sure to write them down because we know you're here because you want to find out how to put your application in. The way we'll work this is that I'll give a brief overview on key points on the slides and have Penny weigh in on each of the pieces as she desires. We always typically pretty much always start off with the slide on what is certification, because there's a lot of confusion about what certification is or is not. A little bit of that is because we tend to use terms interchangeably, and sometimes that creates confusion, and sometimes it's just knowing where we are. So certification is a recognition of individual competency, not competency of an organization. That would be accreditation. And the other piece that's very important is, of course, that it confirms your existing knowledge, skills, and abilities, rather than through a developmental progression of learning, as you might see with a certificate course. Of course, that actually falls in the same categories of things like degree programs or conferences and things like this. Those are all gaining your knowledge, skills, etc. But certification is actually confirming what you already have. We obviously have two testing-based certifications, the CHSE for educators and the CHSOS for the operations specialist. The CHSE-A certification is a portfolio-based process, and you probably also see in the new CHSOS-A, the advanced certification for operations specialist, that also is a portfolio submission process. SSH from the inception has designed these as a service to the healthcare simulation community. It was important to recognize that when we first started our certification investigation, our initial survey showed that something like 87% of individuals were learning on the fly. That means that they were basically figuring how to do things by working with their colleagues or as they sort of figured it out themselves. And it was important to develop these standards, understand what actually is being done in healthcare simulation, and to set them globally. And so that's a lot of what you'll see in our certifications, is that it's to support higher performance and, of course, individual demonstration of expertise. And so you can see how it supports development professionally and so forth. Also important to note that from SSH's perspective, it's a voluntary process. We will never require that you become certified. Your own organization might, other entities may either list a certification as a preference or a requirement, but we as an organization will not require that. Anything you'd like to add, Penny, based on what you have seen?
No, I think you've covered it. I do think it validates your knowledge and also helps move simulation forward as a science, and just continues to strengthen the simulation community. So it's good.
So a CHSE compared to a CH, I didn't change this slide. It looks like a CHSE-A compared to a CHSE is what it should be. I apologize for the error in the slide. Essentially, when you're looking at the advanced certification, this is going well above and beyond that 2-year competency level that we have for CHSE. And key points related to it, you need to think about the fact that it's not just about doing 5 years of work, because you see in the eligibility criteria that there's a 5-year experience requirement. If all you're doing is your job, chances are you're not going to qualify to become a CHSE-A, because we're really looking for people who have had impact beyond their own institution, or if you have a large institution or organization that has many sites, that you've impacted that significantly, that you've had many leadership roles, and through those leadership roles had some influence on the healthcare simulation community. And this, of course, is on top of actually demonstrating advanced skills, expertise, and so forth as a CHSE through in healthcare simulation education activities. Penny?
No, I think you said it. Keep going. It's good.
Okay. Step one, when you're starting all this, and actually there should be a previous to step one, and that would be why you want to become certified as a CHSE-A, but it's probably similar to why you decided to become a CHSE, and now you're just progressing to the higher level certification. But on the presumption you have a Y, you obviously have to determine if you're eligible, and you can see the eligibility criteria here. It is a higher set than the CHSE requirements, which is a bachelor's degree and only 2 years of experience. We're certainly seeing that the 5 years of experience here, as well as the master's degree, that's some of the notable differences. We're still looking again for those advanced levels of performance in the actual application, but this is where you start with the eligibility. And once you're looking again at this, you've got to remember that it's got to go above and beyond and demonstrating consistent activities at an advanced level through the suggested evidence in the standards and suggested evidence document. Penny, additional pieces?
Yeah, the self-assessment, is that in the next slide, or this is something here for the self-assessment?
Actually, go ahead and talk about it now.
Okay. So what we've done on the website is actually provided sort of a self-assessment reflection sort of over your practice and simulation. So you can yourself look at that list, go through and see, do I meet these criteria? Have I done this? And then identify your weaknesses or places where you're not as strong, and then figuring out, do you think you meet these criteria? And that way that'll give you a good kind of a start to the process if you think you're ready or not. So anyway, it is on the website for you to look at. So
yeah, and that will help you when you're reviewing your eligibility and getting some insight into whether you have or demonstrating those consistent activities at the advanced level. And it obviously is also going to tie to the standards and suggested evidence as well. And that's another document that we have on our website. You can see the 4 domains that are listed here. And I think one of the things that gets confusing when you look at the document is that you think, oh my gosh, I need to do all these things. Please don't think that. They are lists of suggested evidence, and a lot of that is coming from what we have seen people do. But that doesn't mean that you have to do those things. It does give you an indication of the level of performance if you're looking at any particular item, because that's what really is key. The other piece that people often can get concerned about is to look at it as like it's a checklist. Like you have to have advanced performance at every single standard that is listed. First of all, that's probably unrealistic. You would have to be in the business for 15 to 20 years before you might achieve that, because there's a tremendous amount of information that's in there, lots and lots of activities through the various standards. And I don't want you to think that you have to meet every single one of them. It's highly likely, actually, that some of them you will exceed the suggested evidence in terms of level of performance. And others, you may be somewhere between that CHSE level, which is in the first column, and then the CHSE level, which is the second column. That's actually completely normal and expected. So, but what you want to look at is that the majority of your activities are really towards or above that CHSE level of performance. Penny, other things?
I do think it's important that you take these and you really, really look at them. This is sort of the base and foundation for the Chsea-A. So take some time, don't just glance through it, and really sort of put yourself in there and think, am I meeting this? What areas in here do I meet or do I not meet? So it's important that you don't just read them and then toss them aside. They're pretty foundational to the process. So be sure you keep those on your nightstand for reading. Referring to them.
Indeed. Yeah. So step number 3, now that you've got your guidance in place and you've had a chance to reflect, is to actually, of course, compile your information. The application, it's a structured portfolio, because when we previously had portfolio submissions, it was often difficult for the applicants to know exactly what we were looking for. And so we decided to make it into a structured portfolio. There's still some variability in the individual sections with the narratives and the exemplar and so forth. But it just helped make it a little easier to understand what is it that we're actually looking for, so the reviewers can complete their review of that. You'll find a lot of this information is for all six sections is in the application information document on our website. You'll see that there's the application worksheet, which is simply a Word document to allow you to type in your responses to the narratives and make notes about your exemplar or whatever it is. So that way, when you get to the online application or you're looking to compile other information, you have your notes all there in that Word document, whether you print it off and like to handwrite, or just go ahead and turn it into an electronic document and make your notes that way. So there's lots of things that are there for resources to help you work through it. A couple of different things related to the application. There is the online application itself. And that's where you're going in through Form Desk and just filling out the answers there. And that's, again, where you can copy and paste them from a Word doc, that application worksheet where you can enter those in. And then we also, because of the nature of the larger file sizes that you have with exemplars or sometimes with your CV and so forth, we just ask that we set up a Dropbox with me, or if you have something else that you need to use other than Dropbox, just email me so we can actually help you get that set up and get that information submitted so the reviewers can work through it and be able to do their evaluation of what you have submitted. Just going to give you a quick overview of the first little bits of the application worksheet. Obviously, it's very small on your screen, I expect. You can find these on our web pages, but it has some introductory information and some recommendations, some do's and don'ts, all those sorts of things like this to help you walk through it. And then, of course, you can see where you start to enter in information. Again, in item 1, you can see you probably don't need to worry about your name and so forth. We are looking for you to be able to make sure you're ready to go into that online form and submit your application. Penny?
One thing to consider is this is not something that you go, oh, this due tomorrow, and you can complete it in one day. This does take some time and some thought and some reflection, and really thinking back over all the things that you have done and thinking of how you're going to frame it to show impact and leadership, and that you do have those advanced educator skills. Right. So it's important to get a head start on this application. People say they spend a lot of time getting it ready, and I think it really shows and is important to have it ready.
Yeah. Based on the data that we have from applicants, it's not uncommon to spend 20 to 30 hours compiling this information, working on your narratives, making sure that your CV is well organized and simulation specific, and of course compiling your exemplar in a way that is easy for the reviewers to understand what it is that you did and gain an understanding, again, of your expertise as a simulation educator. So as Penny mentioned, please make sure you have enough time, because if you leave it till that last minute, you're working on it on the last day before it's due, and it's going to obviously show through, and unfortunately that means you may not be successful this time around because it does take quite a bit of time to put it all together. The application sections itself, we'll just go through those briefly. We're looking for some of your professional information and eligibility confirmation. This is the very basic stuff. Entering in your date of certification that you're currently certified, all these sorts of things like that. It's a fairly basic section, but the section number 2 starts to become a little bit more work, and you can see that we're looking for insight into the domains, your actual demonstrated performance of capabilities in each of the domains. Yeah. We have created some guiding questions for each of the of those questions. They're in the application information sheet, and also in the online form, there's a little information button you can click on that helps you with creating your responses. They do have word limits. Don't feel like you have to go up to the very top of the word limit, but certainly we want you to try and be concise and clear about your particular role in those various pieces that you're writing about. And of course, you're going to be referring back to that standards and suggested evidence document. so we can get some insight into what we're looking for, the levels of performance and so forth. It's also important to note that in your narratives that we're expecting you to refer to your exemplar activity as appropriate. It's not to describe your exemplar activity further, but it's to help link it together. So your exemplar doesn't sit out there all by itself when we wonder how you actually did the needs assessment or assessed the results from that needs assessment, how you led a team, how you created objectives or worked or cross-checked. And again, we're talking about a lot of leadership capabilities, educational expertise and things like that. So a lot of times it's very easy to say, you can see in my exemplar that we had to create some very unique pieces of it to meet our particular learner population. I hope you find that you can see where we did X, Y, and Z. You can obviously, of course, reference it to your CV, and you can say, you can see my advocacy activities listed on page 2 of my CV, and my publications are also here, and it's been cited X number of times, all those sorts of things like that. It just helps refer and tie things together nicely, so it's easier for the reviewers to see that continuity. Penny.
Remember the narrative responses, you will have a word limit. I think it's word or character, Andrew, one of the two.
It's actually a character limit, but it works out to roughly a number of words which are listed in that online application. Yes.
So you really have to be succinct and choose your words. We're not into the flowy type things. We want to know pretty succinctly your impact, your leadership, and really using the guiding questions to, when you create those responses, really answer some questions for the reviewers, and using those standards as a foundation for you answering these questions is very important. So in here, you're trying to describe your role as an advanced educator, which doesn't mean you've done a lot of education at your institution. It means as an advanced educator, that also means you're a leader, you're active in some type of organization, you're showing impact outside of your institution, your state, your region. So just because, or thinking of the advanced educator is not, well, I've been doing SIM for 20 years, I'm advanced. Well, there's also mentoring and other aspects that goes into being that advanced educator. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, as we move along. So.
Yeah, and actually to add on to what Penny was saying, because of the word limits, you may consider actually just responding with some tight bullet points or list type of format rather than something where you might be writing for a journal, for example, where you often have to go a bit more into depth and you have extra words, frankly. And so just thinking about just doing those bullet points or more business style writing that gets straight to the point is often much more helpful. You'll see on this page 2 of the narrative statements, narrative questions. And so the first one was, please provide insight into professional values and capabilities. And you can see the guiding questions over on the right side that help you see what we're looking for. So you're describing where you've done leadership and advocacy, your mentoring, your teamwork, how you've used challenging situations, and feel free to use examples. Say when we've had anything that we've seen from my simulation center was wiped out by a hurricane. How did we manage that and keep operations going? I mean, all those sorts of things are very useful for the reviewers, so they can see how you have functioned at that advanced level.
And the guiding questions actually link to a little bit more globally to the standards. So you'll see there's a correlation and connection between these guiding questions to answer that statement and what you'll find in the standards.
Yeah. Section number 3 is that exemplar that I mentioned a couple times. And so obviously it needs to be something that you're the primary author. We know that sometimes you've had assistance in putting together a simulation activity, designing it. That's great, but you have to be the primary educator that's involved in authoring that simulation activity and then, of course, delivering it. It does need to be a completed item because we are going to ask about what quality data you've had as an output and how you've modified the activity based on that. And really should be a comprehensive, complex type of simulation activity. It doesn't mean that a simple task trainer type activity for starting IBs is not important, but we really want to see something that's a bit more comprehensive and complex, because that's going to show off more of your advanced capabilities as an educator. There's some overview items that you're going to put into the online application. but the bulk of the activity is actually going to be submitted again through that Dropbox or as we arrange, and you can have pictures, videos, descriptive elements. You can do cover pages to help the reviewers understand what you did, whatever it is that is needed, so we can understand not only your role, but the the complex and really creative, fantastic things you've done as a healthcare simulationist, and just make it easy for the reviewers to see what you've done. Penny?
Yeah, this is one section where we like to see an educational activity from beginning to end, sort of that big picture. Just seeing a part of it doesn't really give us a good understanding of how you work and your skills as an advanced educator. So we like to see one from beginning to end. And then during the narratives, you do have some opportunities to address, why the evaluations look this way, or, this is our needs assessment. Normally we do this, but because of the hurricane, we had to adapt. So just a complete activity from beginning to end, from needs assessment all the way to evaluation. Even that feedback and that quality improvement into the activity is really important in showcasing your activity.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just cross-surfacing that in your narrative responses, because that can help us with understanding what it is you are going through and how you achieve these goals. And again, it could even be other documentation that you have in your Exemplar or a folder that you upload, but just help the reviewers understand that the process, the outcomes, all your demonstrated capabilities related to the standards and suggested evidence, because there's so many things every time you do a simulation activity that you will see pinging back to those standards and suggested evidence. And so it's just tying those things together and making it clear for the reviewers. And we know you have lots of choices out there for different simulation activities. Don't go crazy picking out the best one or the one that's going to be perfect. There is no such thing. Just pick one that you're very comfortable with and very familiar with, has some nice outcomes data. You can show you how you've modified the activity, had a good needs assessment, all those sorts of things like that. And any other pieces, some tips and tricks there, Penny, that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do think that every Chsea-A is different. Everyone looks different. If you're working in the military, if you're in the hospital, if you're in an academic setting, if you're in, a freestanding sim center, or you're the only person in your simulation lab. So everyone looks different. So you want to showcase your work, whatever it might be, whether it's virtual, whether it's mannequin, whether it's whatever it might be, and just do your best in giving us the best picture that you can. So.
Indeed. Section number 4 is that simulation-specific CV or resume that I've mentioned a couple of times. What you see here is the types of things that we're really looking for. Oftentimes, CVs have everything, from your very first professional activity onwards. Honestly, I doubt that most of you would care that my first job was doing a paper route. That doesn't really help the reviewers, because even though it officially be a job and could go on a CV, it doesn't actually help understand what you are as a CHSE-A. So it's focusing on those simulation and simulation associated activities and highlighting those things, so it's really crystal clear as much as possible to the reviewers about what you've actually accomplished and demonstrated in your work history related to simulation activities, and all those things that go around it. And don't forget things like your awards and recognitions and some of those creative things that you've done on the side or whatever it might be, because sometimes that's the thing that helps understand the layers of exactly what it is you're capable of doing, and demonstrates again that performance at the advanced level. Penny, some insight on CVs and resumes?
Yeah, I think this is one of a key piece for you guys as applicants. So when I start a review, I go to the CV first, because I want to find out about who you are. And if it's Andrew, I want to find out who Andrew is, sort of how he started, and I can see throughout the CV the work he's done and how he's evolved from, maybe it's a small research project, it's a big one, and maybe he has a blog now, and those things are on there. So I do think sometimes with the CV and a resume, you feel sort of locked into certain titles. I know at my institution we have a pretty rigid one, but if you need to add a topic line that says training attended, or continuing education, that you've shown that you're staying ahead of those things. Mentoring, if you've mentored 20 people within your region, I helped mentor someone in Jamaica. So I made sure I included that I was mentoring this person at a university in Jamaica. So it's important that even if you have to add a section, that's okay. Every CV and resume looks different, but don't exclude things that you think are going to support who you are and your impact and your reach. So.
Yeah, I think just to add on one more comment, please don't think that it has to be just those scholarly level of activities, those peer-reviewed journals and things like that we're looking for, because so many things occur in the simulation world that are outside of, I'll call it the traditional academic constraints. If you're in a tenure-based track and things like that, there's very tight rules about what applies, and you can actually submit towards achieving tenure. This is much more open than that. There's so many ways to do scholarly activities, to do dissemination of knowledge in simulation, to do advocacy. Penny mentioned things like the blogs and things like that. That's all dissemination and oftentimes advocacy, and can be very, very important. So have that wide open look at what it is I've actually done that's perhaps a little different and may not be in a traditional sort of academic tenure-based sort of CV.
Yep.
We're going to ask you for a couple of references. It's probably one of the key things here is not to just pick your supervisor or somebody with a title. And there's loads of great people out here who can do different references. But really what we're looking for is people who can speak well to your simulation and educational capabilities, frankly, as a whole. And the formatted reference form that they're going to be completing is going to ask not only for the Likert type of input specific to the standards, but is also going to be looking for them to actually have some open narrative, brief, albeit, but some insight and perhaps to give some examples through a narrative response about the things that they are rating you on. So if they're giving you all high marks, they can say, well, the reason that they have high marks is because I've seen this person do tremendous advocacy activities at our state or region. They've written letters, they've whatever it might be. They've been able to do grants. They've been able to take us to the next level. They were able to help us achieve funding to open up a new sim center somewhere, whatever it may be. And so you want somebody who can actually cross-reference and triangulate that information that you're submitting and make it easy for the reviewers to see, again, the quality, the capabilities that you've demonstrated. Again, we aren't looking for them to just freestyle a letter reference. We're looking for them to complete that reference form, and that link is something that you send to them. Penny.
I think this is very important here. I think we look to these to sort of validate some of the things that you've actually put into your application. So having someone say, yes, Andrew led this blah, 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 or he has really done great work with his blog and has reached thousands of people, whatever it might be. So these are important. And I think Andrew said something, it doesn't have to be your supervisor. It might be if they can speak to your skills and your abilities and your outside activities, the things outside of your job, whether it's with SSH or Enaxle or ASPE or other for other organizations, someone that knows at least how you work. So
yeah. And your reference, I just saw the question pop up. Do your references need to be a CHSE? And no, they do not. They just need to be able to speak to, again, your capabilities and depth and breadth of simulation educational skills. And that reach beyond the home institution may be critical in demonstrating your leadership and your impact as well. So please consider those things. And a lot of those people may or may not be CHSEs or CHSOSs or whatever. And that's okay. It's not required. There is an application fee. It's $150 for SSH members or for members of organizations that support CHSE-A. It's up to 10 different organizations now, by the way. That list is on our website. Otherwise, it's $250. Just a couple quick notes here. Logistically, once you become a CHSE-A, you'll only use that title. You don't use the CHSE anymore. And the CHSE-A assumes your current CHSE expiration date, whatever that may be. So You may find yourself needing to renew your CHSE while the application is being reviewed, but I can help you work through all of that process. A little bit of the nuts and bolts there, but just make sure everyone understands that piece of the process as well, because CHSE-A is not a renewal of your CHSE. It's a separate process. And so just make sure that's clear to everyone as much as possible. Application timelines. We have March 1 and September 1 each year for submission deadlines. And then obviously we're looking for everything to be submitted. Acceptances are within 2 months from when those application deadlines occur. So you can see those on the slide as well. It means our reviewers have to work very hard to get those items, all of your items reviewed and make decisions. Penny has been on many phone calls with me where we're trying to get things through quickly, and whether we have to have additional review panels, because we're going to go through many iterations of looking at your application just to make sure it's complete and fair to every single applicant. So we work very hard in that 2-month period of time with our volunteer reviewers to come up with the votes. We do have 2 reviewers assigned. Reviewers are independently evaluate your items, and from there, then they will actually go to a 3rd reviewer only when there's a split decision. And we also include a panel review should that be necessary at some point if there's further discussion needed, whatever might be necessary there. I apologize, I'm having to switch over to my regular headset. So you see a lot of extra motion here. Penny, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, so in the review process, we as reviewers and reviewers go through a training, and we're kind of continually and ongoing ensuring a shared mental model for this. But we also know every candidate is different, and we really try to have the team look at that person as someone, as their own person. And it's important that there's sort of a gestalt of this person. That's Mary Faye's word for it, and I like it because it's sort of the overall picture and story that you present to us in your application. So as a reviewer, I'm going to go in there and look at your story and read your story and everything, and you're providing evidence to support what you are saying. So the best evidence is going to help you reach that level. Now, there are some applicants, that aren't successful, and hopefully we'll be able to help them and identify areas for them to strengthen. And sometimes in a year or so, 2 years, they come back and they are successful based upon, feedback, hopefully, that we have provided. But we do our due diligence in trying to really look for the things that will, that make you a CHSE-A versus where you're not, where you may be weaker or not have as much. We try to look for the positives. So we're hoping that this process is fair. It is subjective. I know we had that question before, but we all as a team really try to kind of gain that mental model, really talk to each other and look at things and really work hard to be fair and provide the best we can for our applicants.
And to help with what you're going to be looking at when you're going through and compiling things, we've compiled some tips for success. You'll see that through some of our documentation that you find on our website, but just to make sure we're having those discussions now. This was a new one that just came up from some of our feedback from the most recent application cycle, which is where we first used the structured portfolio. And this notion of having fun and just showing off, showcasing your simpertise. It's a new term, and we have to figure out who coined that. I can't take credit for it, and neither can Penny. So we're trying to figure out. It was a blinded survey, so we don't know who wrote it, but
or we're going to use it.
And we're going to use it, and that kind of frame your mind when you're looking at this. Like if you're looking at becoming a CHSE, there's a sense in your brain that you're an expert, and so you have simpertise somewhere in there, and think about how you can showcase that, because that's really what we're looking for, as Penny mentioned, with the review process. Not how to tear you down and work away from it, but how you are demonstrating and rising up to that level. Of course, every time we see something which is not written at a professional level or has errors and things like that, that doesn't help your case sometimes, unfortunately, because that indicates that you may be rushed. and didn't take the time necessary. And you'll see again that plenty of time to even complete the portfolio later on. Keep those standards and suggested evidence as your guide. And of course, read through the entire set of documents before you even start, so you know exactly what it is that you're compiling and putting together. We certainly want you to pick your best exemplar that shows off your great work. Don't forget to think about having someone review it as well. I know Penny's and other reviewers have been asked to look at submissions. They end up recusing themselves from those particular reviews, of course, but don't be afraid to have someone look at it, because they can actually help you see where you have a little bit of perhaps some confirmation bias or something that you thought it was pretty clear, and they're like, no, I'm not quite getting what you're saying here. And that just will help you fill in those blind gaps and that you thought you'd covered, and make that submission that much better. I'm going to go to the next slide, Penny, and then we'll have you add a couple more things in here. But as you see, of course, we want you to be explicit and clear. You do have those character limits, and so clarity is definitely more important. But keep it simple, keep it simulation focused in your CV. Make sure that your particular role in your various pieces are clear, because if you just say, we did a grant, okay, so what was your part of the grant? Did you help write it? Did you help implement it? Were you part of both? You know, all those things like that. If it leaves questions in the reviewer's brain, it's hard to give you full credit without knowing that, wow, you were the primary author for this grant, and then you actually did the research study, and you wrote it up, and. Make it clear. It just makes it easy. And that will help us understand your impact and how it affected not only your institution, but anywhere beyond as well. And of course, your leadership contributions should be easy to understand as well through that clarity. And just a final note for things like dates to be added in as well. It just gives that detail and makes it clear. Penny, other things that you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So one we talk about is leadership, because I think it is understood as an advanced educator, you are a leader and people look to you because you're mentoring. And so you do not have to be president of SSH. I do not want to be president of SSH. You don't not need to be the president of an organization in order to be a Chsea-A. However, we want to see how you have contributed to the simulation community. Perhaps it's in an organization that I kind of pick, like the NOMP, the Nurse Practitioner Organization. Are you leading the simulation task force? Are you helping develop protocols and standards related to that?
Right.
And be clear in there what your role is. You know, are you leading a new SIG in SSH, and you're impacting, you know, an international community of simulationists? You don't have to be international. You have to show that you are not just doing your daily job. You are reaching out beyond your institution, and a lot of times beyond your state, in your region. And what is your reach? You know, are you mentoring people across? I mean, I have people call me that I've made friends with over the years, asking me things, questions, and I help guide them. We meet monthly, and I have one in Georgia. I have one in, I think, California. You know, a couple people. How far am I reaching with my expertise to people? And that is part of being a Chsea-A. So really being clear on that. I mean, even on your CV, if you have to put, you know, I'm chairing the simulation committee at your institution, but you might want to put, you know, this also is for the entire organization, which is across 3 states. You know, be clear on those things, and feel free to add some statements that add to that. So,
Yep, very definitely. A couple things for reviewer sticking points. Penny, I guess I'll let you take this slide, because I know obviously you're involved in the review process, and I know you can give some great insight into those sorts of things.
Sure. So I think I kind of talked about this a minute ago, that reviewers are trying to make a decision on the overall gestalt, the overall picture and story you provided of the Chsea-A. And not that you're just a good educator, but you're also someone who has gone beyond just being a good simulation educator, that you're advanced, you have impact beyond, and we have to see that. And everyone looks different, and every profession looks different, and we take that into account. Right. Be sure, of course, as Andrew said, professional, make sure that you've checked your spelling and all those types of things. We also like evidence to support. If you say, I did this, you know, do you have a reference for that? Or do you have a, you know, a picture of the webinar you did, or something that's going to support your statements? And one thing that I think is hard, and hopefully the process is better than previous, is follow all the directions and answer all the questions that we ask. Read and reread those print them out, look through them. It's going to take you a while to kind of really sift through it. Of course, Andrew can answer questions. I can answer them. If you have questions about the process, for sure, but that's really important for us. And be sure the exemplar is including the details and all aspects of an activity, from needs assessment, how you implemented it, all the way to the end. And if your organization, if you don't have a full exemplar just printed ready to go, you may have to pull that together and create that document. As long as we have those good details that tells us that you are functioning at that high level. So.
Yep. Penny mentioned reading all the documents, and again, just thinking of what it is you're submitting ahead of time, and it's just ultimately comes back to how are you gonna show yourself off? We know you do amazing things, and so now it's how to put that into some kind of formatted set of documents and online forms and all these things like that, so the reviewers, when they look at it, they also can see the amazing work that you do as well. No small challenge, which of course is why it takes a number of hours to put together a well-designed portfolio and such. But again, I definitely, please send me questions as you're going through the process, because we want to make sure that you are happy with what you're submitting. Honestly, if you're going through the process, we've tried to design it so if it's not pretty obvious, it's like, yes, I'm gonna have a really good chance of this. We don't want you to put in an application just to wing it. We want you to feel confident with what you're putting in, and that you can have a very high chance of being designated as a CHSE-A, because this is a very a high distinction, point blank. I mean, we started in 2014, and right now I think we're up to 76 people that have been recognized as a CHSE since it started. It's not a lot, because it's not an easy certification, but we also know that there's a lot more people out there that should have it and certainly have achieved it. And so it's just putting it into a document and a set of documents and putting it in, and again, demonstrating the amazing things that you do. A few FAQs just to make sure we've covered for them. So again, I mentioned that it doesn't account for the renewal of CHSE. That's a separate process. And again, if you're not sure and your CHSE renewal is coming up, we can certainly just have a quick email conversation. I'll make sure to walk you through that process. SSH membership is not required. Of course, we do encourage it, because there's loads of other great resources and things like that. But if you've got a home organization, fabulous. That's great, because we're looking mostly for you to be involved in simulation. And if you have the ability, then also be an SSH member, because of those additional resources and opportunities to have an impact and do great things. I mentioned the application fee before. Again, you can see it's $150 for the SSH and the supporting organizations. The details are on our website. The submitting the portfolio, just a reminder that it's a combination of that online form as well as items submitted by a Dropbox, or however we arrange if your organization does not allow for Dropbox. And the references, this again, we have to bring it up because some people think, I'm looking for an actual letter of reference. That is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the completion of that formatted reference. And so you're going to be sending the link and making sure they get that in by the application deadline so that your entire portfolio is complete. Penny and I talked about the review process and decisions, and you can see again, 2 reviewers are assigned. We try and make sure that there's at least one, if not both of them, that are very familiar with your particular setting and background. So we don't want to be assigning 2 nurses to evaluate a physician, or 2 physicians to evaluate a nurse, those sorts of things. Frankly, because even though simulation principles are the same, the language in each of the various areas in healthcare often is unique and somehow different from other areas. And so we want to make sure that we have people who are looking at your application that understand your general background at least, and have some linkage to you as an individual as well. But they're going to be making that decision, yes, no, or unsure. And a 3rd reviewers and a review panel are possible depending on the outcomes of that first round of decision making through those 2 reviewers. Penny, I'm going to just open it up for questions here. So you can either unmute and ask, or of course type it into the chat box if you prefer. and would rather have us answer that way.
Hi, this is Tia. If you don't mind me asking a question, thank
Of
you so
course.
much for this presentation. This has answered a lot of my questions.
Great.
And without getting too kind of nitty gritty into my personal, because of course we all have our own personal exemplars. And I do want to ask you, because to me, for the exemplar, a comprehensive exemplar can be different from a complex simulation, for instance. So comprehensive to me is kind of soup to nuts, needs assessment through evaluation criteria. A complex simulation, at least, can be one that is either, mannequin-based complex or SP-based complex. Does the exemplar, because the one I'm picturing in my mind, soup to nuts, but not complex as far as the actual simulation. Making it happen was very, very complex.
Absolutely. And that's actually a great question, because the two terms are related, but clearly distinguishable in terms of what we're looking for. And it's even from a non-complex example, such as the IB trainer simulation that I used before. It's an advanced educator obviously is going to understand that you didn't just decide you're going to do an IV simulation. You're going to train people how to do IVs without having some kinds of needs assessment. And by the way, a needs assessment doesn't have to be a formal thing. It doesn't have to be the full surveys with a full data analysis and you're going out and get a psychometrician to understand exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Because a lot of needs analyses in simulation and healthcare, in frankly, or it's just like, this just has to be done. It's part of the curriculum. That ultimately is a very simple thing for your IV simulation. Guess what? I'm training paramedics. They need to learn how to start IVs. That's a needs assessment. That's as far as you need to go. That, of course, by itself is not going to be enough to demonstrate that advanced level of educational capability, because that's a pretty simple simulation. So when we're looking at asking for a comprehensive or / complex type simulation, it's looking for something that has some combination of those two concepts. And so it may be something that had a more enhanced needs analysis. And so they're going to be able to speak more to that and that process and how to integrate the quality and how you had to go out and build collaboration and all those sorts of things, even though the simulation itself may have turned out to be fairly straightforward and wasn't a complex one. Conversely, it may be just as simple as the AHA said, we really need to be doing these things, and whatever that may be. Again, a simple needs assessment, but the simulation activity itself and the delivery of it is much more complex. So you have lots of moving parts. You're probably combining various modalities. So you're not just having the mannequin with heavy programming and video recording and all these sorts of things like this, but you're embedding participants. You've got to have multiple people involved for recording the data and evaluating the participants and all these sorts of things like that. Two very, very different things, but all of those things, when you tie together, there are different components of the standards that would demonstrate your advanced performance. And so it's just picking an activity that's sort of a higher level in some of those different comprehensive, complex types of things that when we look at it as reviewers, we can go, yeah, this is someone who's moved beyond the book says I have to do an IV simulation and teach them how to do it. So I'll throw out the arms and we'll wing it as we go. And so I hope that helps answer the question. Penny, is there things you would like to add in?
I know when I chose mine, exemplar back, I don't know how many years ago, I think I'm like you. I mean, it wasn't a complicated, complex sim. It was an interprofessional sim with nursing students and med students. And I was the ESP, the pre-briefer, the debriefer. And it was not my best thing. Of course, it was like the 4th day of doing it. And I spoke to that. But I also spoke to how long it took to get us there and the needs assessment and the planning and so forth. And as long as it highlights and supports a complete activity that showcases your abilities, I think that works. It doesn't have to be, I mean, look at an in situ sim. I mean, if it's a code on the floor, there's a huge needs assessment for that. There's evaluation, there's feedback. We do look for, and somewhere in there, you'll speak to, what is your sort of philosophy with like psychological safety, unless it's high stakes testing, and, how are you addressing that? And what is your thoughts of debriefing, or we hope you debrief, and speaking to, I use reflection or guided reflection, or I use debriefing for meaningful learning, and this is how we blah, 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 but yeah, I think Andrew's said it very nicely with complex versus comprehensive.
Can I just ask one more little follow-up piece to that?
Of course.
So if you choose something that is, is that way, would it be appropriate, or would it muddy the waters too much if you then gave an example either in Dropbox or referred to it of maybe a much more complex actual simulation? But then I kind of feel like you're almost bringing in another piece of an exemplar. Like, do you not want us to do that, or would that be appropriate?
I think it does muddy it a little bit. However, I just want to ask you a question. So why are you thinking you need to submit a complex?
Just because of the comprehensive complex. So
Tell me the example, if you're okay.
Oh, I'm totally fine. I just don't want to bore everybody else.
No, it might help people understand it a little more.
Okay, so I teach advanced practice nurses, and we developed, there is a group of us, but the bigger project is an ACNM, which is the midwifery national organization, and ACOG. Together, we have developed interprofessional education simulations, and I was a very integral part of that with that national group, as well as personally at my institution. But the simulation is between an OBGYN resident and a midwifery student. And so there's no mannequin and there's no SP, and it's their collaboration to work together to take care of a patient that is the simulation. So while I wrote the scenarios that they collaborate with each other about, I didn't train an SP, and I didn't program a mannequin, and all those other things that I have done, but that wasn't the point. I mean, that was not the objective of the simulation. So we chose the appropriate modality for the objective of the simulation, which of course I could address in the needs assessment and and all of that. There's nowhere to highlight then that I actually know how to train an SP, and I know how to write an SP script, and that piece of it, for instance.
I think you can write to that, because I think your simulation is a great example, because you're meeting your objective, you have your needs assessment. I'm sure you have feedback and evaluation and how you improved it, how you debriefed, or whether you did a reflection or blah, blah, blah. I think in your narratives, you can say, my exemplar highlights my work from my organizations all the way down to my institution. I was instrumental, and I led the initiative on this, the standards for ACOG, and I don't do birthing or anything. So however that works, I think that's powerful in your simulation. But in your narrative, I think you could speak to say, while I was very involved with this, I also coordinate and lead simulations such as these other things. And, I use debriefing for meaningful learning, or debriefing with good judgment, and blah, 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 blah. I think when you go through there, you're going to see where you can insert and showcase your other talents as well. I don't think you need 2 exemplars, but
and actually, one of the simplest ways to address that is go ahead and have that one as your exemplar that you're submitting. But then in your CV, just create another section and just say list of primary simulation activities, or simulation activities for which I've been the primary author. And you can just state what the title is, or whatever format, and give a little blurb. This was an SP focused one. This was a mannequin focused one. This one was an IPE, or whatever combination. And then they can see, okay, well, you chose this one. Look at the fabulous things on this one, but hey, there's a whole long list of these other great things for which you've been the primary author. And that again demonstrates what you've actually done. And so it just makes it clear. And you can even say in your cover, say, I selected this one from my long list you see on my CV, so they know to reference and go back and forth. But you wanted to, because what you've just described is actually a pretty unique one, where it's actually 2 learners interacting with each other, and that's really kind of creative and unique. So it's a wonderful one to share, for example.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Other questions?
Thank you, Tia, for asking a question.
All right, well, I have another one if nobody else has it.
Okay,
Go for it.
go for it.
I jotted down some.
Good, good.
So I'm all about nuts and bolts.
Mhm.
So the references that need to come into the system, my inkling, and I haven't looked at like the online form yet, but my inkling is, do I need to have a certain amount of it filled out on the form before I send my references there? Like, will they be seeing anything that I've put there or
No,
not? Okay, I just want to make sure I give them plenty of time.
The references, what is in the references is one of the appendices in the CHSE-A handbook, so you can see what they're going to be sent. And of course,
Okay.
you can just click on the link yourself just to go see the form. I mean, that's totally fine there. But it's going to be completely blank when they receive it. You can tell them a good reference for the form that we have created probably is going to take 10 to 15 minutes. It's not something that's, oh my gosh, they've got to sit back and write for hours and hours and hours. You'll see that it's a pretty tight form. It's not designed to pull every little detail out, but it's give that cross-reference, that triangulation of your performance, and just give some of those nice examples. I actually did one of the references last time, and there's plenty of room in the narrative to show I've worked with that person on this, and this, and I saw them demonstrate this, and there's plenty of place for them to put that in. And again, it just helps the reviewers know, hey, they understand who you are, and they've seen you demonstrate those high level of skills.
Thank you.
And if you have more questions, keep going. Makes it easy. And again, a lot of the things that other people may have similar questions but just don't know to ask quite, or quite how to ask, perhaps.
All right, I do have one more, and I promise this is the last
I
one.
love it. No, keep them coming. It's great.
So my CHSE expires in June of 2022. So not this year, but about a year and a half from now. So if I don't make the March deadline, I'm looking at the September one. So if it goes through in September and I'm notified in November, then do I need to renew? And I don't know what the renewal is for the CHSE. I haven't looked that far in advance yet. But would I need to renew like literally 7 months later, the CHSE-A?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. And is it complex?
It's when you become CHSE-A, the only way you can renew is through submitting continued professional development activities.
Okay.
It's identical to what you're doing for CHSE, just a higher level of activity. We're going to expect that you're probably more, instead of just participating in a committee, that you're leading it, or some of those things like that, because that's going to be a natural progression. All those, and so all the domains remain the same, the type of activities remain the same, all of it's the same. So even if you started entering them in for CHSE, they will actually carry over when we change you to CHSE-A status. And so you won't have to go back and re-enter them or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
And you don't have to take the exam again, so keep up your CHSE-A.
Thank you, Tia, for asking such great questions. So I just let you carry the load there. I didn't need to shirk my responsibilities, but those were all the same questions I had. And again, thank you for sort of solidifying that a solid application rather than a rushed application is really what you're after, so that,
And we're here to help. We have people that will, we can't say, oh, you're a shoo-in, Beth, you're going to make it. But people that kind of say, I don't see you have enough leadership or something. And one of the questions, Beth, when it kind of made me think of this, people always say, well, I haven't published an article, I can't do it. Well, there's a lot of ways to disseminate, even besides, presentations. Of course, we like publications. Some people aren't necessarily situated for that at that point. But so for instance, Elena Harrington has done the tech blog with the NLN. That reaches quite a few people. Some people have some live podcast or something they do on their website that's really getting a lot of hits, and it's, have they written, I know, Tia, you were talking about some things with ACOG and the midwifery group, if you've written protocols or policies in an organization, lots of ways of dissemination besides publishing. I'm academic, so our brains always go to publishing,
Mhm.
but not everyone necessarily does that. And so you may have to get creative in how have you disseminated it. And I think a lot of people when they're when we kind of sit down and you're kind of laying out all you do, especially people that may not keep up with their stuff, like in academics, I have to, that's how I keep my job. But some people don't keep a list of all of their stuff. Is really sitting down and talking with someone about all the things you do. You'd be surprised the things you've done that you have not written down, or, you know, networking groups at SSH, or you're part of that SIG, you don't think about some of those types of things. So it's sometimes a brainstorming on your own and just taking a few hours to go, what have I done? Looking through your emails. You know, so we've helped some people kind of realize, gosh, they've done a lot more than they think. And it's how you phrase it, it's how you frame it, as
Right.
far as work goes.
Mhm.
Thank you both so much. It's very motivating.
Yes, I want to see some applications come in soon, or in September, or the following time.
Indeed.
Thanks so much, Penny. It was good to hear.
Hi. Good to
How are
see-
you?
I'm good.
But you can see my email on the screen there. And if you'd rather talk to Penny, since her email isn't up here, just email me and I'll forward your question to her. It's all good. And I know we do get questions on, you know, as Tia brought up, great questions on our exemplar. Please feel free to drop those into me. And if I'm not confident in answering those, I'll go to the committee and get insight from those. And then we'll give you feedback on what might be some great points to point out some of those, whatever is helpful to you to help you move forward in the application process. And again, each one of you has a unique picture and a unique path, and to be able to show off that Simpertese is going to be a fun experience for you. But when we have a structured portfolio, it does make it a little challenging sometimes to know exactly where things fit. So we're quite happy to help with that and make sure that we're supporting what it is that you're trying to do. So just looking forward to seeing your applications come in, and of course answering your questions in the meantime. Thank you all, and
Thanks
I hope you
everyone
have
for
a wonderful
joining.
day.
Yes. Bye.